Welcome to the deep dive. When we look at global security, we often see the surface level stuff, right? A ship sailing somewhere, troops deploying, maybe a big exercise.
Right, the headlines.
Exactly. But underneath all that, for any of it to actually work, there's this whole structure. There's a doctrine, capability.
A belief system almost, codified.
Yeah. And today, that's what we're diving into, that foundation. Specifically, how expeditionary forces think the U.S. Marine Corps and their Navy partners, how they project power from the sea.
Yeah.
And sustain it, which is crucial in today's, well, complex world.
That's spot on. So our mission today really is to get past those headlines. We're going deep into the documents, the official sources that actually dictate how these forces operate.
Okay.
We're pulling together the core warfighting ideas, looking at just how complicated amphibious operations are, and then touching on the tech, the modernization efforts that are shaping things right now.
So the goal is for you, the listener, to get a really solid grasp of what it takes. Projecting power from the sea isn't simple.
Not at all. It's about integration, complexity.
And we've got a good stack of material to guide us through this.
We do. We're grounding this whole discussion in some key authoritative sources. We've got Joint Publication 302, that's the rule book for amphibious operations.
Right.
Then there's Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 10, which lays out Marine Corps operations, their philosophy. And we're also pulling from important program docs, like the 2025 avplan.pdf, that gives us insight into marine aviation's future.
The hardware.
Exactly. And some really useful Naval War College material on the whole sustainment picture. So we're distilling all that down for you, try and get the most important nuggets.
All right, let's get into it. Section 1, the foundational philosophy. We're talking maneuver warfare and the Marine Air Ground Task Force.
Okay.
So starting with the Marine Corps identity itself, Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 10 calls them America's Expeditionary Force in Readiness. Straightforward enough? But then it uses this phrase I find really interesting, a middleweight force. What does that actually mean?
That middleweight term is, it's really significant. It's not just a label. It's defining their strategic niche.
Between what and what?
Between pure speed and sheer staying power. The doctrine says they're light enough to get there quickly. That's your rapid response capability. But critically, they're also heavy enough to carry the day upon arrival and capable of operating independent of local infrastructure.
Yep.
So they bridge that gap. Air power is fast, right? It delivers light forces quickly, but struggles with volume, with sustainment.
Right.
And then you have, say, heavy Army divisions, huge volume, huge staying power, but slower to deploy. The Marines sit in that middle ground.
But middleweight implies trade-offs too, doesn't it? They're faster than a big Army armored unit, sure, but they don't have the same kind of heavy armor or the same depth of artillery or the logistics for a really long, drawn-out fight.
Absolutely. That's the inherent trade-off. It's baked into their design. The Marine Air Ground Task Force can hit the beach fast, establish a presence, but they're really designed for that initial phase.
So for the long haul.
For the long haul, for really large-scale, high-intensity stuff, they absolutely rely on the wider joint force. Specifically, the Army often takes over the big logistics piece, the common user theater logistics, and brings in those heavy follow-on forces. It underscores why that joint planning we'll talk about is so vital.
And their whole mindset, their operational approach, is driven by maneuver warfare. That's their core philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And it seems built on accepting that war is messy.
Yeah, that's a key insight. Their doctrine explicitly states that conflict is defined by friction, uncertainty, disorder, and complexity. It's not chess.
So you can just stick to a rigid plan.
Exactly. Success isn't about having the perfect plan or just overwhelming firepower. Maneuver warfare is about shattering the enemy's cohesion, their ability to think and fight as a unit by adapting faster than they can. It's about getting inside their decision cycle.
Okay, a war of speed and widths. But how do you actually do that? How do you build that agility when everything is inherently chaotic?
The practical tool they use is something called mission command, or the Marines often call it mission tactics.
Mission command. Yeah.
It means commanders assign a task, an objective, but they don't dictate precisely how the subordinate has to achieve it.
That sounds like a lot of trust involved.
Huge amount of trust. It's essential. The subordinate gets maximum freedom to figure out the how, but crucially, they also get a very clear commander's intent.
The why.
Exactly. The overall purpose, the desired end state. So even if the situation changes dramatically, which it will, the subordinate can adapt their actions on the fly, deviate from the original plan if needed, as long as they're still achieving that higher intent.
It decentralizes everything, speeds things up.
Precisely. If the enemy command structure is rigid, if every decision has to go up the chain and back down, well, the force using mission command is going to operate way faster. They can exploit opportunities, use speed, tempo, surprise, keep the enemy constantly reacting, always off balance.
And this flexibility, this maneuver warfare idea, it ties directly into how they organize, right? The Marine Air Ground Task Force concept.
Yes, the MGTF, that's the fundamental building block. Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 10 confirms it's designed specifically to be task organized. You can tailor it for basically any mission anywhere on the spectrum, from, cooperation to conflict.
It's an integrated package deal.
Completely integrated. Command, ground troops, air power, logistics, all bundled together from the start, designed to work as one team.
Maybe quickly break down those 4 elements again, just to remind everyone how they fit together.
Sure. You've got the command element, or CE, that's the headquarters, C2. Then the ground combat element, GCE, your infantry, tanks, artillery, the main punch on the ground. The aviation combat element, ACE, that's all the air assets. Helicopters, jets, drones, close air support, transport, everything aerial. And finally, the logistics combat element, LCE, providing all the support, supply, maintenance, medical, engineering, transportation.
And the key is they're not just bolted together.
No, they train and fight as a single combined arms entity. That synergy is the whole point.
And these MAGTFs come in different sizes depending on the job.
That's right. 4 main types. The biggest is the Marine Expeditionary Force, the MEF. That's the main warfighting organization, capable of sustained combat ashore.
Okay.
Then you step down to the Marine Expeditionary Brigade, the MEB. Still very capable, often the core of a major amphibious landing, and it often relies on those prepositioned ships we'll talk about later.
Got it.
Then the most common one you see forward deployed is the Marine Expeditionary Unit, the MEU. That's your standard sea-based crisis response force, usually about 2,200 Marines and sailors on ships.
The first responders.
Pretty much. And finally, the most flexible is the Special Purpose MEGTF, the SPMAGTF, tailored for very specific tasks, maybe disaster relief or embassy reinforcement or training partner nations. It's built for the job at hand.
Okay, that gives us the organizational foundation.
Yeah.
Now let's shift to Section 2, the operations themselves, amphibious operations. And it's not all just big D-Day style landings.
Absolutely not. Joint Publication 302 lays out 5 distinct types.
5 types, what are they?
You have the amphibious assault, the raid, the demonstration, the withdrawal, and then support to crisis response or other operations.
And the Doctrine singles one out as the hardest.
It does. The amphibious assault landing on a potentially hostile shore, establishing a force, is explicitly called the most complex and difficult of all military operations. Period.
Why so complex?
Think about it. You're sequencing forces arriving by sea and air, coordinating naval gunfire, airstrikes, landing craft waves, helicopter assaults, all onto a defended beachhead. The timing, the integration, it's immense.
Makes sense. Now, I find the difference between that big assault and the raid really telling. Let's focus on the amphibious raid for a second. Speed and stealth seem paramount there.
Totally different animal. Joint Publication 302 defines a raid as a swift incursion into or temporary occupation of an objective followed by a planned withdrawal.
In and out.
Exactly. Quick, surgical strike. The purpose could be grabbing intel, maybe confusing the enemy, snatching a key person or piece of gear, or, very relevant today, destroying a specific enemy capability, like a missile site or a command node.
And the planning priorities flip completely, right? It's not about massing force.
It's all about surprise. The doctrine stresses that the force size is limited to the absolute minimum needed. Why? To maintain operational security, OPSCC, and achieve surprise.
And here's the really interesting part. They often don't shoot first.
Right. This is counterintuitive for many people thinking about military ops. Success usually hinges so much on that element of surprise that typically you don't use preparatory fires. No bombing or shelling the objective beforehand.
Why take that risk?
Because the shock of suddenly appearing unannounced is often deemed more valuable than softening up the defenses but losing surprise. It's a calculated risk based on the mission.
Okay, then there's the amphibious demonstration. This isn't even about taking an objective, is it? It's a head game.
Pure psychological warfare, exactly. JT 302 calls it a show of force conducted to deceive or influence the enemy and compel a specific course of action. It's a strategic feint.
How might that work?
Well, you could conduct a demonstration near the actual objective area. Maybe make the enemy think you're landing there, forcing them to reveal their defensive positions or keep their reserves pinned down. Or you could do it somewhere else entirely, maybe hundreds of miles away, to draw off the enemy's strategic reserves, make them waste resources reacting to a ghost threat while the real landing happens elsewhere.
But here's where it gets really wild. The doctrine talks about deceiving your own forces.
This is one of the most fascinating and maybe unsettling aspects.
Yeah.
For a demonstration to be truly convincing to the enemy watching, sometimes the participants can't know it's just a show.
Wait, really?
Yes. The doctrine explicitly mentions that planners have to weigh the risks and benefits. Sometimes the troops know it's a feint, but other times, to make it look absolutely real, personnel might have to falsely believe their mission is the main effort.
Wow. So you're intentionally misleading your own Marines or sailors.
For the sake of the larger strategic deception, think about it. If the enemy captures someone or intercepts comms, the deception needs to hold up. If the participants genuinely believe they're the main attack, the illusion is much stronger.
That's a heavy command decision. It speaks volumes about the need for trust, but also the potential for, well, lack of transparency down the chain, even if it's doctrinally sound.
It highlights the extreme pressures. You're sacrificing potentially lower-level awareness for higher-level operational security and strategic effect. It's a tough balancing act, and again, it probably only works within that framework of mission command where the individual is still acting within the commander's overall intent, even if the specific how involves this kind of deception.
Okay, let's move into Section 3, Command and Control, Joint Planning. This stuff gets complicated fast in the littoral environment, especially this idea of a co-equal planning relationship.
Yeah, this is really specific to amphibious operations. You have the overall amphibious force, which is made up of two main parts. There's the amphibious task force, the ATF, that's the ships, the sea component, usually commanded by a Navy officer, the commander, amphibious task force, or CATF.
Okay.
And then there's the landing force, the LF, the Marines going ashore, commanded by the commander landing force, or CLF, usually a Marine officer.
And they're co-equal. How does that work?
In planning matters, yes.
Right.
Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 10 is very clear. They are co-equal when planning the operation. Neither one dictates to the other.
What does that mean practically?
It means they must agree on the really critical decisions, things like selecting the actual landing beaches, setting the H-hour, the time of the landing. Those are mutual decisions. It forces genuine joint integration right from the start. The Navy can't just pick a beach without the Marines agreeing it fits their ground plan, and the Marines can't demand a landing site the Navy can't feasibly support.
What if they just can't agree?
Then the doctrine says the issue has to go up immediately to their common Bach, the Joint Force Commander, who has to make the call. It ensures disagreements don't paralyze the planning.
That need for tight coordination must be even more intense when you think about the airspace. All those helicopters, jets, drones, buzzing around the ships and the beach. How is that managed?
It's incredibly complex. Joint Publication 302 outlines the different Air C2 agencies involved. It's crowded airspace.
Who's in charge?
Well, it depends on where and when. You've got the Amphibious Air Traffic Control Center, the AATCC, usually controlling aircraft right near the ships. Then there's the Navy Tactical Air Control Center, the TKCC afloat, often managing the initial ship-to-shore movements.
Okay, Navy controls near the ships.
And then the Marines have their own primary Air C2 hub, the Marine Tactical Air Command Center, the TCC. This agency directs the aviation combat elements operations.
So multiple controllers. Where's the friction?
The really tricky part is the handoff. As the landing force moves ashore and establishes itself, control often needs to shift from the Navy controllers afloat to the Marine TCC, which might still be setting up ashore. Managing that transition smoothly while deconflicting low-flying helicopters and fast-moving jets in the same confined space, it demands meticulous planning and constant communication.
It really sounds like you have to plan everything backward from the beach.
That's exactly what Joint Publication 302 emphasizes. The landing force commander figures out the scheme of maneuver ashore first. What needs to happen on the ground dictates everything else.
How so?
Well, that ground plan determines where the CLF needs to land, which then tells the CATF which beaches are suitable. That, in turn, dictates how many landing craft are needed, what types, and crucially, how the ships need to be loaded.
The loadout. That seems critical.
It's make or break. And the doctrine highlights just how difficult it is to change once you're sailing. If the situation changes and you need, say, tanks offloaded before artillery, but they were loaded in the reverse order, rearranging cargo inside a packed amphibious ship at sea can take hours or days for a complete load reconfiguration.
Wow, so you're really committed to that initial plan. Tactical flexibility gets constrained by logistics.
I'm massively constrained by the loadout. It puts huge pressure on getting the initial planning and sequencing right weeks, maybe months, before the operation even starts.
And as those ships get closer, they face shoreline defenses. Mines, obstacles. How's clearing that handled?
Yeah, enemies know amphibious landings are vulnerable. They use counter-landing doctrines, setting up layered defenses. Joint Publication 302 talks about 4 layered barriers within the littorals: the perimeter, main, engineer, and beach.
Mines offshore, obstacles on the beach.
Exactly. Deep water mines, shallow water mines, anti-landing craft obstacles, bunkers, wire, more mines inland.
So who clears what? Is it Navy or Marines?
It's split. There's an agreed-upon line called the Clearance Coordination Line. Generally, everything seaward of that line is the Navy's responsibility, the CATF. They handle the mine warfare in the maritime domain using specialized divers, underwater vehicles, mine sweepers.
Okay.
Then, from that Clearance Coordination Line landward, it becomes the landing force commander's responsibility. The CLF's forces, engineers, breachers handle clearing the obstacles on the beach itself and pushing inland, breaking through those final barriers.
All right, let's pivot to Section 4, modernization. How are these capabilities evolving, especially in marine aviation? The 2025-AV Plan.PDF gives some clues. What about the Harrier? It's getting old, but still around.
The AVAB Harrier, yeah. It's definitely sunsetting, but the plan notes it's still an enduring joint program working with Italy and Spain. Its main contribution now, besides its unique VSTOL capability, is critical training support, like certifying forward air controllers, JTACs. It fills a niche until the F-35B is fully integrated everywhere.
And its helicopter partners, the H-1s, the Viper and the Venom. The plan calls them the MAGTF's multi-tool.
That's a great description. The H-1Z Viper attack helicopter and the UH-1Y Venom utility helicopter are seen as incredibly valuable. Why? High readiness rates, relatively low cost per flight hour, which means more training, more proficiency. But the key thing strategically is the plan calls them a kill web enabler and effector. They're not just providing close air support anymore. They're becoming networked nodes, sensors, and shooters, extending the reach and situational awareness of the whole MGTF, especially in that complex low-altitude fight. They're expected to be relevant well into the 2040s.
And modernization isn't just platforms, it's weapons. Precision is key. Talk about the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System 2, or APKWS.
Right. APKWS is pretty clever. It takes a standard, cheap 70mm Hydro rocket and adds a laser guidance kit in the middle. Turns a dumb rocket into a smart, precise munition.
And it's getting an upgrade.
Yeah, the big news is the move to a single variant block upgrade. Logistically, that's huge. It means the same guidance unit works on any rocket fired from any platform, helicopter, jet, maybe even ground launchers eventually. Simplifies everything.
But there's a specific adaptation here that seems really relevant now.
Yes, this is critical. They're actively working on certifying a proximity fuse for APKWS. Why? Specifically to make it better against unmanned aircraft systems drones.
Counter-UAS.
Exactly. It's about using a relatively low-cost, high-volume precision weapon to take down those small, numerous, often cheap aerial threats. Instead of using a $1 million missile to shoot down a $1,000 drone, you use an upgraded rocket. It's a smart adaptation.
And beyond upgrading existing stuff, there are new missiles coming, like the Precision Attack Strike Missile.
Right, PASM. This started as a joint capability technology demonstration, basically proving the concept. The idea is to give helicopters, specifically the AH-1Z Viper, a much longer reach.
For what kinds of targets?
The focus is on offensive anti-surface warfare or maritime strike. So using a helicopter, traditionally thought of for supporting ground troops, to potentially hit enemy ships or coastal targets from further away. It expands the Viper's role significantly.
But none of this works the networked helicopters, the long-range missiles, without the digital plumbing, right? The network.
Absolutely critical. That maneuver warfare philosophy needing speed and adaptation, it relies on shared awareness. This is where things like the MAGTF Agile Network Gateway Link, or MANGL, come in.
MGL, what does it do?
According to the AV plan, its job is to connect all these different, sometimes stovepiped, sensor and communication systems, pull data from various sources, fuse it, and share it across the MAGTF with the Navy, with joint partners, even coalition forces.
So it builds that common picture.
Exactly. And by doing that seamlessly, it contributes speed and range to the combined arms capability. It helps everyone see the same thing faster, which lets you make decisions faster, which gets you back inside the enemy's loop.
Okay, shifting from offense to defense, protecting the force once it's ashore. Ground-based air defense seems like a big modernization push, especially the medium-range intercept capability, MRIC.
MRC is definitely a priority. It's designed to protect key assets, maybe a forward base, a port, a logistics hub from threats like cruise missiles and a larger, more sophisticated UAS.
What does an MRIC unit look like?
The plan details a platoon structure, 4 launchers, a command and control node, and 80 interceptors per platoon.
And is fielding soon.
Relatively soon. The plan mentions a prototype platoon heading to the 1st Littoral Anti-Air Battalion in fiscal year 25. Then fielding across other units through FY28, it's addressing a known gap.
And they're also looking shorter range, too, replacing the Stinger.
Yes, the venerable Stinger missile needs an update. The Marine Corps is working closely with the Army on their next-generation short-range interceptor program, trying to find that replacement for close-in air defense against helicopters, low-flying aircraft, and smaller drones.
When is that expected?
Prototyping is happening now. The target for introduction is around fiscal year 29. It makes sense for the services to collaborate on this one.
Okay. Section 5. Let's talk about the elephant in the room for any expeditionary operation. Sustainment. Logistics. Getting there and staying there. We touched on sea power versus air power.
Right, and Marine Corps Doctrinal Publication 10 is really direct about this. Air power gets you there fast, with light forces. But, it says, sea power provides a means to deliver fires, personnel, and resources with somewhat less immediacy, but in much greater weight and volume.
So for the big stuff, the long haul.
For sheer volume, sea power is king. The doctrine concludes it's the most useful means of projecting military power overseas, across the spectrum of operations.
But those big, slow cargo ships carrying all that stuff, they seem like juicy targets in a modern conflict. How do you manage that risk?
That's the core challenge, isn't it? You need those military sea lift ships, those civilian crewed merchant vessels, to move the mountains of gear, fuel, ammo. The primary way to mitigate the vulnerability is through prepositioning.
Putting stuff closer beforehand.
Exactly. The Maritime Prepositioning Forces concept, MPF, is key here. As MCTP 10 explains, you load ships with marine gear and station them strategically around the world. Then, when a crisis hits, you can fly the Marines in to meet up with their equipment near the hotspot.
Cuts down travel time for the vulnerable ships.
Reduces the time those big, slow ships have to spend steaming across contested waters right at the start of a crisis. It combines the speed of airlift for personnel with the volume of sea lift for gear.
And within the MAGTF itself, you have the Logistics Combat Element, the LCE. What's their role day to day?
The LCE handles all the tactical logistics within the MAGTF: supply runs, vehicle maintenance, field medical care, engineering support like building bridges or clearing roads, transportation, everything needed to keep the force functioning.
And the planning challenge here.
Joint Publication 302 really hammers this. The logistics effort has to be coordinated meticulously through every phase: embarkation, rehearsals, movement, the actual assault, follow-on actions, and planners constantly face that fundamental trade-off.
Speed versus volume again.
Speed of buildup ashore versus the amount of combat power you can sustain ashore. You can push forces onto the beach faster with fewer supplies per person, or you can build up more slowly but ensure they have everything they need. It all depends on how many landing craft you have, how fast they can cycle back and forth, and again, that critical ship loadout.
And supporting this whole enterprise requires strategic assets, right?
Yeah.
Managed by the Navy and others.
Absolutely. The Military Sea Lift Command, MSC, is crucial. They manage a fleet of about 125 civilian crewed ships that do everything from refueling Navy warships to prepositioning Army and Marine Corps cargo worldwide.
And those prepositioned stops are vital for reducing strain on lift.
Definitely. The Naval War College material highlights this. Having gear already forward placed dramatically cuts down how much you need to move from the U.S. when something kicks off.
What are the main ways they preposition?
2 big ones. First, the Maritime Prepositioning Ships Squadrons, the MPS runs we mentioned. These squadrons, usually groups of ships, are stationed in key regions like the Pacific or Indian Ocean. They carry enough equipment and supplies for a whole Marine Expeditionary Brigade, sometimes even elements of a MEF, ready to go.
Okay.
The second type is geoprepositioning on land. The prime example is the Norway Air-Landed MEB program, or LMEB, sometimes referred to as the Marine Corps Prepositioning Program Norway. They store equipment for MEB vehicles, supplies, ammo, in climate-controlled caves in Norway.
Ready for Marines to fly in and try it out.
Exactly. Both methods aim to get capable forces into a crisis zone much faster than trying to ship everything from scratch.
And finally, a really important point about long-term sustainment. the Army's role.
Yes, this is critical for understanding the joint fight. While the Marines have their organic LCE for the initial phases, if an operation becomes large-scale or goes on for a long time...
Sustained operations ashore.
Right. For those sustained operations, the Naval War College material is explicit. The United States Army is typically designated and resourced as the lead service for providing common user theater logistics and sustainment for all joint forces.
So the Army takes over the big picture logistics for everyone.
Largely, yes. The Marines still handle their internal logistics, but the Army provides the theater-level backbone managing ports, major supply routes, large-scale distribution for everyone operating in that theater. It really highlights the interdependence. The Marines might kick the door down, but the Army often keeps it open and supplied for the long haul.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. We've covered the maneuver warfare philosophy, the different complex types of amphibious ops, the command structures, the modernization. It really paints a picture of how all these pieces have to fit together.
Absolutely. So just to quickly recap the key takeaways for you. First, that core Marine Corps identity is built on maneuver warfare and mission command. It's all about decentralized action, speed, and shattering the enemy's plan through shared understanding or intent. Second, remember those 5 types of amphibious ops from JP 302. They're distinct. An assault is massively complex, while a raid hinges on surprise, maybe even foregoing prep fires, and a demonstration that might involve strategic deception, even internally.
Okay.
And third, the modernization piece is huge. Networking is everything, systems like MAGTF connecting sensors and shooters, and adapting weapons like putting proximity fuses on APKWS rockets to counter drones. It's all geared towards projecting power effectively from the sea in a contested environment.
And that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. We talked about that co-equal planning relationship between the Navy CATF and the Marine CLF. If they disagree, it goes up to the Joint Force Commander, who needs to ensure unity of effort. JP 302 says this often requires the JFC's personal attention.
Right, that high-level oversight is crucial.
So consider that need for top-down unity. Now, factor in the demands of maneuver warfare, which requires speed, initiative, and decentralized decision-making down to the lowest levels. And then add that possibility, like in an amphibious demonstration, of intentionally deceiving your own people about the true mission for strategic effect.
It's a real tension there.
It is. So the question for you is, what level of shared understanding, what depth of trust do you think is truly necessary across all those levels, from the JFC, ensuring the grand plan holds together, right down to the individual Marine trying to execute their part based on commander's intent to actually maintain the speed and initiative needed for maneuver warfare to succeed, especially when dealing with that inherent chaos and potential for internal friction or even deception? How do you balance control and trust in that environment?
That's the fundamental challenge, isn't it? Operating effectively amidst the fog and friction of war.